We started working on long division in class today, and one of the first things I've taught the kids is how to remember kind of the order that we do long division, and that is we divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. And when we think about it, I told them to think about dirty monkeys smell bad. So the D would be divide, M multiply, S subtract, B bring down. And we talked in some of the groups about what we really mean by division, and that is, for example, if I had 9 and I divide it by 7, it's the same thing as taking 9 counters, and how many groups of 7 counters can you take out of 9 counters? And you can take one group, and there are 2 left over. And just like over here. And so the steps we talked about today in class taking were look at the first digit inside this dividend here and say how many groups of 7 can you take out of 9? Just like we did when we worked on estimating quotients. How many groups of 7? The difference is, though, we can't go over. So how many groups of 7 can we take out of 9? Well, you can take one group of 7 out of 9. That's the divide step. The divide step is that question we asked, the how many groups up. And so the next step is multiply, and you multiply what you write on top, 1 times the 7. You write it underneath. Next step is subtract. 9 minus 7 is 2. And then if there was anything to bring down, we would bring it down and put it right beside our remainder, but there's not. And so we would have 1R2. To check our work, we didn't talk about this in all the groups, but we will on Monday. To check our work, we take the divisor of 7 times our quotient of 1. So we do 1 times 7 equals 7, plus our remainder of 2. And that gives us 9, and that should match our dividend right there. And it does. And if it does, chances are we're right. So let's try another one that's just slightly different. We'll try to kind of kick it up a notch each time we go through this. We'll try to make it a little bit more difficult. Okay, and I'll show you another trick that we worked on today that might make things a little easier for the kids. So let's say we had this, a little larger number this time. Let's say we had 24 divided by 6. One thing I taught them is, since we're working then with multiples of 6, if you don't have access to a multiplication chart, it might be helpful to come over and list your multiples of 6. So 1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 6, 12, 3 times 6, 18, 4 times 6, 24, 5 times 6, 30, 6 times 6, 36, and I'm not going to need to go any farther than this probably, at least not right now. And so what I do is I say the same thing, same steps. My divide, my dirty for dirty monkeys, is how many groups of 6 can you take out of 2? And if I had 2 counters sitting on the table, I could not make a group of 6 out of 2. So I'm going to move over then, and I'm going to look at 24, just like I did when I did my estimating quotients. And I say, how many groups of 6 can I take out of 24? Well, if I come over here and I look at my multiples and find the one that is closest to 24 without going over, it would be 24. So in this case, my answer would just be 4. I would write it above the 4. Next step, multiply. 6 times 4 is 24. S is subtract. B is bring down. There's nothing to bring down, so I'm done, and I don't need to write R0. And to check it, I would just do 4 times 6 equals 24, and that matches, and so I'm done. So I'm going to leave 6's and continue working with a divisor of 6, so I don't have to rewrite all these multiples every time. But it's something that you might want to encourage your student to do if he or she is not really comfortable with their math facts, and if they don't have access to a multiplication chart at home. Okay, and so what if we had a little more complex problem, again a little bit larger, and we had 41 and we divide it by 6. Same steps. How many groups of 4 can I take, or how many groups of 6 can I take out of 4? And if I had 4 counters, I could not make a group of 6. So my 0 would be my answer, so I'm going to move over. How many groups of 6 can you take out of 41? Without going over, so I come over to my multiples. I get as close to 41 as I can without going over. 42 is really close, but it's over, so I can't do 42. So I'm going to back up. I'm going to take that right there, 6 groups of 6. 6 times 6 is 36. That's as close as I can get, so I write my 6 on top. Next step is M multiply. 6 times 6 is 36. S subtract. And B bring down, there's nothing to bring down. I want to make sure this 5 is less than the 6. It is. And so I'm done. And so I have R 5. And to check it, I'm going to take 6 times 6 is 36 plus the 5 and my remainder, and I get 41. And that matches right there. And that's as far as we got the first time with some of the groups. But I'm going to go ahead and continue here. Well, no, I think we'll stop. And so that's as far as we're going to go with this one. I don't want to overdo it. With our first lesson in division today, what we basically did is just go through one time, and we didn't get to bringing anything down, although we'll work on that in another time.